One of the main differences between informational and argumentative writing is that argumentative writing is going to include counterargument. Counterargument is when we as the writer acknowledge the opposing argument and then explain why it isn't credible or why our argument is stronger. Your argumentative essay needs to include counterargument, and you're going to include that at the beginning of your third body paragraph. Before we get writing, though, let's take a look at counterargument in real life. So imagine that Miss Hirosh, Miss Lau, and I are at a coffee shop and we're grading and planning. And Miss Hirosh decides that she wants to take a break to go get dessert. Let's take a break and go get dessert. I love dessert, and there is a new restaurant that I want to try. It's 7 p.m. and we still haven't planned our lesson for tomorrow. We have a gazillion things to grade, and I haven't gone to bed before midnight in weeks. Girl, we need to work. So Miss Lau and I are not convinced that we can take a break to go get dessert. We have too much work to get done. But let's see if our opinion will change after we hear Miss Hirosh's brilliantly crafted counterargument. I know that we have a lot to get done, and we've been really busy lately. Notice that Miss Hirosh starts by acknowledging the opposing argument. She acknowledges that Miss Lau and I feel a little overwhelmed, that we have so much work to do. So now she's going to prove that even though we feel this way, that she's still right, that her argument is stronger. However, we need to give ourselves a break sometimes. I think that we'll be more productive after we've taken some time to rest and eat some yummy food. So in her counterargument, Ms. Hirosh acknowledges the opposing argument, and then she explains why her argument is stronger. And we're convinced. Okay, you're right. Renike and I totally struggle with work-life balance. Let's grab dessert and then we can rock this grading. So kind of a silly example, but counterargument can really be a powerful tool in strengthening your argument, which is why it's important that you include it in your argumentative essay. And you're going to include it at the beginning of your third body paragraph. When you're trying to decide what your counterargument will be, I encourage you to ask yourself this question. What is my audience thinking that might influence if they believe my argument or not? So when I asked myself that question, I thought a lot about how my audience, has heard over and over and over that graffiti can lead to crime, that it's often a sign that a neighborhood is going downhill or impoverished. So I know my audience is thinking that. And so I want to make sure that number one, I acknowledge the opposing argument. I acknowledge that this is something that they feel or that they're thinking about. And then I'm going to explain why that's not a credible argument or why my argument is stronger. So here's the beginning of my third body paragraph. My grandfather is not alone in believing that graffiti is a sign that a neighborhood is struggling with poverty or crime. So here I'm going to acknowledge the opposing argument. One of the reasons that graffiti gets such a bad rap is because many believe that graffiti hurts a neighborhood economically. They argue that graffiti makes people feel unsafe, hurts the profits of local businesses, and leads to a culture of crime. Make sure when you acknowledge the opposing argument that you really take the time to actually explain what the opposing side actually believes. Now I'm going to step 2, explain why it isn't credible or why my argument is stronger. What they'd be surprised to learn, however, is that neighborhoods are benefiting economically from graffiti. And you'll see me actually do step 2 within the rest of my body paragraph. So let's take a moment to look at that. So here's my full body paragraph. I'm just going to highlight my transition and my counterargument in gray. My grandfather is not alone in believing that graffiti is a sign that a neighborhood is struggling with poverty and crime. One of the reasons that graffiti gets such a bad rap is because many believe that graffiti hurts a neighborhood economically. They argue that graffiti makes people feel unsafe, hurts the profits of local businesses, and leads to a culture of crime. What they'd be surprised to learn, however, is that neighborhoods are benefiting economically from graffiti. So that's actually, if I go back on that, sorry, I'm going to delete this real fast. That is actually my, that transition to my third body paragraph here is actually going to be my topic sentence, right? This is my supporting claim number 3 sorry about that. My supporting claim number 3 is that neighborhoods are benefiting economically from graffiti. So that's my claim. That's what I'm arguing. And I'm just using my counterclaim really as kind of a transition between my second and my third body paragraph. But I'm going to start by acknowledging that opposing argument. So now here I'm going to introduce my, my evidence. Alison Meyer, in an article about the positive impact of street art in Buenos Aires, Argentina, quotes economist Elizabeth Currid Halkett, a professor at the University of Southern California. There's a strong relationship between the cultural activity of a city, which graffiti is a part of, and its economy. Rather than a sign that a city is suffering economically, it's more likely an indication that a young, hip, middle class people are going to want to drink beer nearby. So here's my explanation. Graffiti has actually boosted the economy of many urban centers around the world in recent years. One of the primary ways that cities are making money from graffiti is tourism. It has become popular to visit cities that have cultures of graffiti or street art. The selfie alone is worth the cost of flights and hotels. This has led to the development of many neighborhoods that have a history of graffiti. Local restaurants, boutique hotels, shops, and bars move into the neighborhood to serve the new wave of tourism. Although many still believe that graffiti is a sign of poverty and crime, the business and locals in the graffiti hubs know the truth. And here's my concluding sentence. They've benefited hugely from the colorful murals lining the streets. So, number 1, I'm going to start by acknowledging the opposing argument, and then I'm going to explain why it isn't a credible argument or why my argument is stronger. So I proved to you that graffiti is not actually a sign that a neighborhood is struggling from poverty and crime. It's actually a sign that a neighborhood is really doing well economically. So take a moment now. Go back and ask yourself, what is it that my audience is thinking that might influence whether they believe my argument or not? Then start your third body paragraph with that opposing argument and then prove it wrong. Explain why it isn't credible or why your argument is stronger. Get started.